Hi, I'm Nami.
I'm Michael, and welcome to Mike.
And Nami Plus. What I'm going to talk about today?
It was a few years ago. It was in winter time. One of my mentors took me into his office and he showed me a terrorist execution video. It was a Jordanian man and he was wearing orange jumpsuit, and it was moments before his execution. Who you can see he was beat up, he was swollen, in his eyes a brokenness, a knowing that there is no hope. He was in a cage. In this cage it was like inch thick bars, you can't leave. He's in the middle of like a dirt kind of field, and he's doused in kerosene, and there's a line of kerosene going across, and one of these guys come with a torch and he torches the ground, and you see the fire coming closer, and he poof goes on fire immediately. Hands to his ears, and he's screaming, and he's screaming, and I'm seeing him. He's moving around in his helplessness and his pain. And what really struck me was the sound. I've never heard the sound of death. I smelled death before. You know when you smell death. It's a particular smell. It's so different. You know it. And now, this was the first time that I heard the sound of death. It was like hearing, if I could hear it, the screams in hell. In fact, at the very moment, I asked God to forgive me in my heart if I ever said, go to hell to anybody. Because I don't have the moral capacity to even say that. To say, go to hell to anyone. Because I cannot fathom or imagine or say that to anyone. To bring them to experience such death. And he was like that for probably what felt like 1 or 2 minutes.
Oh my gosh, that's a long time.
Later, he just fell on his knees and hit his head against the bars. He's still on his knees, and you can see his face melting.
So he collapsed into the bars.
Yes, he collapsed into the bars.
Just melting?
It's melting, and he solidifies. This was the most difficult thing for me to witness. It struck such a strong chord in
your being?
In my being. That's really the way to put it.
Oh my gosh.
As a Christian, I've studied a lot of apologetics and theodicy and the problem of evil, and we look into the solutions, and there are solutions to the rational problem of evil. Okay, there's a God, there's an omnibenevolent, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God out there, and there's evil. Okay, there's a lot of rational ways you can make this up for evil
that you can
and
understand
God
it
to coexist.
Right.
And it's not a contradiction. But it didn't still resolve or settle in my heart this emotional and spiritual angst I was feeling. I was feeling so
disturbed.
God, where are you in this situation? I was questioning, and I couldn't hold back but come in confusion. I was scared. I was challenged. I was shook. I really was.
Oh my God.
I don't even know if shook is the right word for this.
You were deeply shaken.
I was scarred, and I was questioning my faith. I was questioning God. God, where are you in this? Spiritually, emotionally,
like
where are you in this? Later that week, after watching the video, I was at a gym, and I was kind of eavesdropping on a conversation of a father and a son. Oh, the son was probably 10 or something, and the father just says, you know what, son, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate today. And the son asks, why? Why are we celebrating? And the father says, because we're alive another day. Let's celebrate today because we're alive. Let's be thankful. And then the son had no response to that, but I just couldn't help but take a look and a glance at the father. I'm like, wow, what a profound thing to say. So simple.
Yeah.
But yet could be so profound. And that really spoke to me. I really needed that time.
In the locker room?
Yes, because I guess I lost hope in humanity for a week.
Yeah.
And it really did strike me. And during this time, it just led me towards prayer and asking God, like, God, help me through this. I'm struggling. I want to find answers. Give me the answer. And as I was doing this, I kept on imagining Galahad was there. And I was helpless. That this act has been done. That Galahad died this way. And I'm stuck behind a screen just watching it. And it's broadcasted live for the whole world to see. And what could I have done to have changed that? I wish I could be there in this place. Like, and the reality is that that was someone's son. That Jordanian man was someone's son. And a father and mother, or cousin or brother, or sister, or friend, they had to see him suffer and die like that. God, where are you in that? I can't imagine the pain and hurt and anger, and I don't even know what it is, the devastation. I don't know what word it is for the father to have felt, or the mother to have felt, to see their son
Murdered like that.
And where God led me was to the cross of Christ. I was questioning, God, where are you in this? Where were you, God? Couldn't you, I mean, why does this have to exist? Why does this pain and suffering have to be? Why did you allow it? I just want to share a quick story. It's called The Long Silence. And it reads, at the end of time, billions of people were scattered on a great plain before God's throne. Most shrank back from the brilliant light before them. But some groups near the front talked heatedly, not with cringing shame, but with belligerence. Can God judge us? How can he know about suffering? Snapped the pert young brunette. She ripped open a sleeve to reveal a tattoo numbered from a Nazi concentration camp. We endured terror, beatings, torture, death. In another group, a Negro boy lowered his collar. What about this? He demanded, showing an ugly rope burn. Lynched, for no crime but being black. In another crowd, a pregnant schoolgirl with sullen eyes. Why should I suffer? She murmured. It wasn't my fault. Far out across the plain, there were hundreds of such groups. Each had a complaint against God for the evil and suffering he permitted in this world. How lucky God was to live in heaven where all was sweetness and light, where there was no weeping or fear, no hunger or hatred. What did God know of all that man had been forced to endure in this world? For God leads a pretty sheltered life, they said. So each of these groups sent forth their leader, chosen because he or she had suffered the most. A Jew, a Negro, a person from Hiroshima, a horribly deformed arthritic, a thalidomide child. In the center of the plain, they consulted each other. At last, they were ready to present their case. It was rather clever. Before God could be qualified to be their judge, he must endure what they had endured. Their decision was that God should be sentenced to live on earth as a human. Let him be born a Jew. Let the legitimacy of his birth be doubted. Give him a work so difficult that even his family will think him out of his mind when he tries to do it. Let him be betrayed by his closest friends. Let him face false charges, be tried by a prejudiced jury, and convicted by a cowardly judge. Let him be tortured. At the last, let him see what it means to be terribly alone. Then let him die. Let him die so that there can be no doubt that he died. Let there be a great host of witnesses to verify it. As each leader announced his portion of the sentence, loud murmurs of approval went up from the throng of people assembled. And when the last had finished pronouncing the sentence, there was a long silence. No one uttered another word. No one moved. For suddenly, all knew that God had already served his sentence. God only reminded me of the gospel story. Like, God, where are you in this man's suffering? In fact, God is him, and he understands. God was that man. Jesus, where was Jesus in this? Well, Jesus wasn't just there, he was him. And that's what happened 2,000 years ago when Christ went through the death and suffering on the cross. For us. In fact, if there's any God out there that exists who would understand the pain and suffering of humankind, it would be the God of Jesus Christ, who actually came down and suffered and died as a human being. What God revealed to me was that Jesus actually was that man, the one burning, because on the cross he demonstrated that. If there's anyone who comes close to having the right, to have the authority to question God, who lived on this earth, I believe it would be Job. God characterized him as someone who was blameless and upright, so he was
perfect.
I guess you can say righteous before God. He was one of the richest people during the time when he lived, and he had a huge family. He had many servants, he had many possessions, he had good friends, he was married to a loving wife. But what happens is he loses everything. He loses everything very quickly. He loses all his children. His children die. All his riches are plundered, and he loses all his possessions.
All his friends are like, what did you do to be like this? We
Yes.
don't want to be friends with such a wretched person.
Yeah, his 3 close friends goes against him. He loses his servants. So he loses his possessions.
His wife is like, goodbye.
His wife, I think there was also bickering and argument with his wife. So, marriage not good, friendship not good, possessions not good, children and family gone, everything gone. Even his body is attacked with boils all over his body.
Oh my gosh.
And he has to break pots and get these shattered pots and scrape his skin because it's so itchy. His body is failing him, and even in his sleep he's getting attacked by demonic dreams, so he can't get good rest. Even children walking by, once known as a reputable man, children are mocking and making fun of him. His pride is attacked. Everything he once ever had. I mean, he had everything. He had so much of everything he once ever had was taken away from him. And in spite of this, he was righteous and upright. That's what God characterized him. So if there's anybody who comes close to having the right to question God, where are you? Who are you? How could you do this? How could you be a God like this? Why is this fair? It would be Job. And he in fact does, He finally breaks, it goes on for like 20, 30 chapters. His friends are, they're back and forth exchanging, and you did something wrong, Job. Job is like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. And finally Job just breaks. He questions God. God, why'd you do this to me? God's response was so profound when I was reading this, and he said, who are you to question me, Job? Who are you to question me? Were you there when I made the foundations of this earth? Were you there when I set the sky and the stars, and when I created everything? Were you there? Were you there in my intentions? Do you know me, Job? God goes on to totally verse Job, questioning him back. Who are you to question me? But in this experience, what Job said at the end was, before I only knew or heard God, but now I see him.
Do you see God?
I don't think what Job meant in seeing was like physically seeing.
I know. That's what I understand.
A lot more through this, because
you see in that cage.
Yes, I shared in the suffering, though it was only through video form.
Yeah.
I shared in the suffering because I couldn't take the thought out that was Galahad, that was my son there, and I was helpless to see him suffer. But then I realized that God understands that because it was through God the Father who sent his son to suffer and die on the cross.
Oh my gosh.
And if there's any God that exists out there who would understand the plight and pain of human suffering, it would be the God of Jesus Christ. In fact, he has an answer, and a victory, and a hope, and something to look forward to, and to smile, and to have peace, and it's not up to us. The victory has already been done, for Christ did not remain dead. God rose him from the dead. My spiritual and emotional storm was quelled through the cross of Christ. And now what am I doing right now, knowing this? You know, Ravi Zacharias, he said something that's really interesting that I think about often. It's when we live a life full of pleasure and we have everything we want and we're satisfied and comfortable, we become weary. We become weary of pleasure. Having too much pleasure, we become weary of it and we question the purpose of life. And when we experience much pain and suffering, it becomes so difficult and we begin to question God. During this time, I was meditating on the book of Romans, chapter 10, verses 9 to 10. But that reads that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you confess and are saved. God led me to two kind of revelations. One being, what am I doing to confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord? Meaning, am I sharing the gospel to others? If life is so precious, and if God is so loving, and if God has loved me, and if the gospel truth is really the hope in my life, what am I doing to share it with others? I thank you for sharing this time through this reflection.
We always do read your comments and your messages, and I'm really moved every time that someone shares about their suffering, because everyone thinks that they're alone in their suffering, and suffering is really difficult and it's hard. But I guess it just encourages me because it's so beautiful to be able to share in our suffering and share about our suffering and share together with our suffering. Because that's how we grow. And that's how we realize that we're not alone in our suffering. So thank you for always sharing with us. And even though we don't reply to every single one of them, please know that we do read every single one of them. And we're thankful for you. We're thankful for your time to listen to us as well in our sharing of our suffering.
And we hope that we can continue to also share with you and boast in our weakness. Thank you.